Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. This is the Tim Laskus Show, episode 001. Today's featured guest is Nicole Holland. She's a master coach, a marketing strategist, and a visibility expert. She's also the host of the highly regarded podcast, the Business Building Rockstars Show. She's interviewed over 220 high achievers. She's also been named in Huffington Post as one of 50 must-follow women entrepreneurs in 2017. Enjoy.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests. Entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Welcome, everyone. This is the Tim Laskus Show, and I'm excited because I have Nicole Holland as a guest today. And Nicole, thank you for joining me.
Tim, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself aside from business. And we're going to jump in there in a few moments and talk about what your main passion is business-wise. But, I like for people to learn a little bit about my guests as far as what they do for fun. What's your passion aside from business?
Okay, seriously, right now, my passion is my business. It's so bad. But I think one thing I can say right off the bat that's not business related, actually it is. Oh my goodness. So everything's kind of tied into my business because I built my business around me. And I was going to say I have purple hair, so that's a little bit different. But then I said, oh, wait a minute, I have purple hair. And I actually did my brand board around a picture of me with my hair. So my colors for my business are even my hair. But I have a pretty simple life. I live in a little cottage and I've got a couple cats, and I don't think I'm that crazy cat lady, but I live by the beach and just, I enjoy just being in really simple pleasures, spending time with friends. And I love old architecture. I love going into old houses and just imagining the stories. And I like wine.
Oh.
I live in a wine region. And so I like going to the vineyards and tasting the different wines.
The free sampling, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I'm on the East Coast near the Tennessee area. Well, I'm in South Carolina, but close to Tennessee. And moonshine tasting has really become very popular. It's become legal. Everyone's making this legal moonshine. Of course, I'm sure you could still find the illegal stuff, and you could go in and they have a little town. I call it kind of the Lake Tahoe of the Smoky Mountains, and it's a place called Gatlinburg, and they have a number of these little moonshine tasting places, and boy, people can really go in there and get liquored up for free, and it's quite interesting.
That's fascinating.
And they soak everything in those, from peaches to cherries, and I mean, you name it, they're getting pretty creative. So, but anyway, well, it sounds like you're pretty eclectic and you like a lot of things, and you especially enjoy the outdoors. So now let's kind of go into your focus of professionally and tell us a little bit about what you're working on, and let's take it from there.
Yeah. So what I'm working on right now is actually, as we're recording, kind of restructuring my business. And so that's why right now everything revolves around my business. But in essence, what I am is a master coach. I'm a marketing strategist, and I help entrepreneurs get seen, get heard, and get more clients. And that's happened in a number of ways, primarily through social engagement marketing. So social media and interactions, building relationships, and podcast interviews. And so I've started offering a service to help experts get featured on podcasts. And so that's new right now as we're speaking in January. And I've got a program coming out. Actually, the program was launched as a beta, so it's a test program in the summer of 2016, and I've reworked it and found what people are loving and taken away anything they don't love, and so that's actually going to be open for enrollment by the end of February, so perhaps when this airs. And so what that's about is also helping people be great guests, helping people really understand how to leverage other people's podcasts to grow their audience, to grow their business, while still providing tons of value and building the relationship with the podcast host.
Right. And you talked about relationships, and that's so important. And especially with podcasting and, being able to reach out to people and develop relationships with people, not only the hosts, but, also their listeners is quite important and is kind of a goldmine for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people miss the importance when they're thinking about leveraging or using podcasts as a strategy. They forget that the people listening are people listening. They're real people. The people listening to us right now are in this conversation with us, and we're not speaking at them or for them. We're speaking with them. We're speaking together and inviting them into an intimate conversation. And I think it's so important for people to recognize that and really honor that, and make sure that when they go on a podcast, that it's a right fit, that you're speaking with a host that you can build a relationship with, and then it extends to the audience because the audience and the host have already built a relationship. And so it's just so important to honor that. And I think far too few people do, which is why I got really passionate about it and built out that program. And that's just passion, really. And it's crazy to think about. You're passionate about helping people understand etiquette for podcast guesting. Yep, that's exactly what I'm passionate about.
And it's important to be able to connect. And it sounds like you've really kind of been able to really figure that out, is how do you connect with the listeners? And once you figure that out and not just go and just, like you said, talk to people, or a lot of times maybe people may get on and they want to just kind of spout out everything they're doing and, buy from me or go visit this and do that. And they do that, but then they kind of miss the connection. But it sounds like you really have it figured out as, how do you really connect with people? Because once you have that relationship, then you can have them, for lifelong customers. And I guess to be able to build up that trust, and people have to be able to trust you, which, do you think it's more difficult or more easy for people who are listening to trust someone over a podcast versus, because they can't see them, versus someone who's on video?
You know what I think it is? I don't think it matters necessarily whether it's a video or not, but, well, I shouldn't say that. So I think a lot of people wonder, should I do video in addition to the audio? I think the audio is really the most important because people want to have that company, want to have that connection. They want to learn things. They want to laugh. They want that on-demand content. And video is a little bit harder to, to consume when you're, on the road or you're running or whatever. Whereas audio, it's available, it's easy. And I think what it is it's not about seeing somebody with your eyes. It's about seeing somebody with your soul. And when we tune into podcasts where there's a good synergy between the host and the guest, we get to, it's almost like going to a cafe and you're in this like really great conversation with somebody and there's other tables around you and they can hear you and that they're leaning in to listen because what you're talking about is so intense and it's so good. And it's like that with a listener. You're a part of the conversation, even though you're not verbally in it. And so I guess your question is, I didn't really answer that, but I think that the video doesn't matter. I think people trust you because they feel you. They get if you're authentic, if you're of value to them. If they want to listen to your conversation again, they're going to. And if they're not feeling you, they won't. And so I think it's really easy to build trust through podcast guesting. I think something that a lot of people think is they're going to go on and talk to people and then like they're going to be buyers. And that's not the way it works. You have to build that relationship over time. And the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about, reading a book versus watching the movie. And there's been a number of novels and popular books out there that have been made into movies and have had conversations with people where they say, oh, the book was just much better. And I think that podcasting is almost kind of like that book. You really kind of just, there's something about it that your brain just kind of fills in the gaps and it becomes more real and there's more of a connection sometimes. Sometimes the visual stuff can just kind of take away from the message or, from the mood or whatnot. But
Yeah.
that's just kind of what came to mind.
And that experience, right? You're saying that. And I'm like, yes, because when you're in that book, like you said, your brain fills in the gap. So you have this idea of what somebody looks like or what their emotions are or whatever, but you identify with them. And I think you're so right on that point.
Right. Absolutely. Now, a number of our listeners are entrepreneurs or wantrepreneurs, and I know they're thirsty and just hungry for some tips. Can you provide a couple of tips for the listeners on what's been helpful for you in your venture?
Yeah. So, it just depends really on what aspect we want to talk about. But I think one thing that when you're starting out, you have so much information coming at you that it's really easy to get distracted. It's really easy to forget why you're doing it in the first place. And I think it's really important to have some kind of practice to remind yourself, whether it's a routine, a habit, or just like a touchstone, to remind yourself regularly, you've got this. You've got this. And there is nothing that will come up that you can't manage. And it's something that I see a lot with my audience is that they're excited about something and then they start learning all of the options and all these different opinions of people saying, well, you need this and you need this and you need this. In fact, I just got off a call with a couple just before we started recording who had like this laundry list of things that all these different people were telling them they needed. And it's overwhelming. And it's like, no, you don't need any of this. Like, this is all stuff you can have, but this does the same thing as this, and this does the same thing as this. And so we're in this information age and in this like heavy marketing age where people tend to prey on people with problems and they want to provide, I guess it's always been like that, but they want to provide you with a solution, but it's more about providing with their solution, not just a solution. And it's actually one of the main reason that I built my business the way I did. And it started with something called the Business Building Rockstars Summit, where I was just seeing so many people being taken advantage of, if you will, and being sold bills of goods that never delivered. And I got so fed up and I thought, I want to be a trusted resource. I want to go I'm going to seek out those people who can really provide value authentically and honestly and just say, if you want to take that next step with this, it's cool, but you don't have to because here's all these different options. Here's all these different solutions. And so we're going to help you find the right one for you so that you feel great about it and we feel great about it. And so that was really the premise of me building the Business Building Rockstar brand.
Right. And you had mentioned starting out that, to kind of remember why you started your journey in the first place. And it's easy to get overwhelmed as new entrepreneurs. Everything is exciting in the beginning. Everything's fun. It's, I can't wait I can almost taste success. And you're full of motivation and energy. And then at some point, in many different points along your journey, you're going to hit those road bumps. And it's easy to get thrown off and you're kind of sitting on the side of the road going, what kind of journey am I on? Why did I choose this? And so for you to be really clear in the beginning, okay, this is why I wanted to do this. And that's what's going to get you through. And, I often talk about, purpose and people being very clear on their purpose. And if your purpose is to be an entrepreneur because you want to make a lot of money, you're probably not going to be that successful. But if your purpose is for helping others and serving others and making people have a better life, regardless of what your service or your product is, it has to be about helping other people. How does your product or service help other people, improve the lives of other people? And even with, what you're doing, you're helping, people who are, frustrated and maybe have been taken advantage of and helping them, have that dream back and get them back on track. And and that's real important. So, yeah, being clear of that purpose and why you started down that journey in the first place, because you're going to get knocked around quite a bit, and there's going to be many times where you just want to give up, and the majority of the people who never make it gave up. They just quit.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing is standing in your way but you.
Yeah, yeah. So when did you realize that you wanted to kind of go down this path of being an entrepreneur and to do your own thing and help others, and not so much be in the rat race and just have a job?
I don't know. It's probably about 2 or 3. I
Early on. Huh?
I say, I was born an entrepreneur. I remember my first notable business endeavor, if you will, was Red Wagon Produce. We were just little kids, and my father was a gardener, and so we would take the vegetables and fruits. He'd help us bag them up and put prices on them, and we would take them up to the pool, and the parents, after swimming, would come and get the stuff to make dinner with. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I loved making people happy with this fresh fruit and vegetables that I loved so much. And they were so happy, and they paid me happily. And then I got to save that money and buy something I wanted with it. And it was really cool. And I mean, I did things like, Mother's Helper, and I liked the idea of giving something to somebody to make them happy and receiving compensation for it. I had my first business, I guess, if you will. I had a corporate training firm when I was 23. I started that. But then I left and I went into working for somebody else, and I had a side practice for a while, a few times, but I kept going back to jobs. And so it was just, I think I always had that entrepreneurial voice and pull and desire, but whatever fears were holding me back for a really long time, I let go of in December of 2014. What are we now? We're 2017. So 2 years ago, January, it was 2015. Yeah. So yeah, December 2014. Sorry, it's a bit late tonight as we're talking. And so December 2014, December 28th, I quit my job as a correctional officer, let that go, and decided to jump in feet first. And no matter what, I knew I was going to make it.
Wow. So you had mentioned you let go of those fears. Could I ask you what some of those fears were that you had?
Well, the biggest one is how I'm going to pay the mortgage. It's the day I quit my job, I quit my job. And I'm up north, and we were having a very heavy, cold winter. I quit my job by sending an email to my superintendent. It was on a night shift, and I got off at 7 a.m. and went home, took a nap, and around 2 p.m., 3 p.m., I learned that my furnace went out, and it wasn't something that could be fixed. As I found out later, it was something that needed to be replaced. So the amount of money that I had set aside to get me through the month, because I didn't plan to quit.
Oh, no.
It was very like, I need to quit, and I quit, and I'm starting my own business, and I didn't do it the smart way. But I was like, well, I can survive for a month. If I have to go flip burgers at McDonald's, I will, but I'm not working.
Now, it wasn't after you had a couple of glasses of wine, was it?
No, I was completely sober and realized that working in the facility for one more day wasn't worth one more day of my life. And with that, I stepped into and through that fear, and just to remind me that I was on track, my furnace went out, and I needed to spend every penny that I had for that month's living expenses on a new furnace.
Wow. Yeah. And that's
scary. That's fearful. That's scary.
It's a very common fear. Yeah. How am I going to pay the rent, put food on the table? And what are other people going to think? They're going to think I'm nuts for giving up.
Oh, that I didn't care about.
Job. So that wasn't one of your issues.
No, people already thought I was nuts. I just.
But that's a good thing. It's a good mindset to have, is to not worry about what people think, because it doesn't matter whether they support you or they don't. It really doesn't impact whether you're going to be successful, because it's you.
And I think oftentimes, from the successful people that I've studied, most of them haven't had that support. It's nice if people support you, but the people that I find really make big waves are the ones who, not the ones, but they're oftentimes people who did not have somebody saying, oh yeah, you can do this. They were the ones who had people saying, what, are you foolish, or this is ridiculous, or, or just nobody saying anything. And I think it's really easy for people to stay in this comfortable space where they have a dream, but they're never going to make it a reality. And it's always going to be a dream because that's safe. And it's when we step out of that and we decide, oh, no matter what, I am going to make my dream come true because that's the life I want to live. That's when people see real transformation, I think. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about feeling safe. And I think if there's enough comfort and not enough pain where you're at, that you're not going to make that change. And I kind of often equate it to as if you turn the stove on and you turn one of the eyes of the stove on and you just turn it out real, real low and you put your hand pretty close to it, almost touching it, and it stays pretty low, you can keep your hand there for a while. But once you turn that up and you turn it up to high and you put your hand on there, there's going to be a lot of pain and you're going to pull back pretty quick. And so I think for people to make change, regardless of what it is, change in their jobs or change in a relationship or just change in anything, that there has to be a kind of a level of discomfort where they can't take it anymore, where they've kind of reached that point where like, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm done. But if people are kind of in that moderate range, they're like, well, I really don't like my job, but at least I do have enough money to pay the bills, and I can go out every now and then and buy some clothes, and that's not that bad. But I'd love to be a millionaire, but there's not enough pain to change for some people, and so that kind of that comfort zone is too cushy for them to give up, because the unknown of, well, man, what if I do flop on my face and then I am out in the cold? That's going to be really miserable. But, at least right now I do have a roof over my head and I'm able to go out and buy food and clothes. So I guess it's good enough, and people will kind of stay. And I think it's the same thing in relationships too. Relationships not that bad, I guess I'll stay with that
Tolerable.
What's that?
It's like it's tolerable.
It's tolerable, yeah. And so I just think that people need to experience kind of a certain level of discomfort and pain before they kind of make that decision. It doesn't have to be that way, but it's, I've kind of seen a pattern of that. And so once they get to the point where they're fed up, they'll do something. But, it sounded like you started out really young when 2 years old of, going around selling vegetables, but no, it's a great story. I could imagine, as you're telling me, I could see you like pulling this little red wagon full of vegetables, and I'm sure people look down at you and go like, oh, look at this cute little girl. I'm sure I'll buy them. And so I'm sure your family, was supportive, and, whoever went with you. But, what kind of messages did you receive growing up about, money and finances in general, or even about entrepreneurship?
Definitely no messages about entrepreneurship, and mixed messages about money and finance. My father encouraged the produce selling, I think in part because he grew vegetables and fruits as his hobby. And I mean, our entire yard was vegetable beds and fruit trees, and entire yard, side yard, backyard. It didn't happen in the front yard. But then he also went in, because you can't just do it in the yard, he needed more space to grow more stuff. He bought rented multiple garden plots in the town we lived in. And I mean, I have one brother. Like, we weren't feeding an army, but he just got so much joy from gardening. Sure. And so we would have fruits and vegetables out the yin yang, and we'd eat whatever we could eat. And, he was always giving away to all the neighbors, but there was still an abundance. And so I think for him, it was just a way to, keep on doing what he wanted to do without anybody complaining too much that there was all this fruit and vegetable going bad. And, but he taught me some really good lessons about money in budgeting. I remember when I was a young teenager, or maybe a tween, I wanted new furniture for my bedroom. I was tired of sleeping in the little girl's bed, and I wanted a double bed, and I wanted it modern, IKEA looking, the Swedish stuff, and so I found these, in a magazine, I found these pictures of this bedroom furniture that I really liked, and my mother instantly was like, no, because no, just no. But my father wanted to find a way for me to learn that I can get it if I give. And I don't remember what the deal was, but not give, but there had to be, he is always teaching consequences, right? So another example is when I was a little bit older and the kids, care about labels and things like that. And my brother, all he wanted was Nike shoes, and I wanted Gap clothes. And so what my dad did was he said, okay, you get this much money to spend in the fall and this much money to spend in the spring. And so these are the budgets. So you need to take a look at, is it worth it? So you can get one pair of Nikes, for example, or you can get or at the Gap, you can maybe get one pair of jeans and 2 sweaters, or you can go to Kmart and get, all this other stuff. And so he made me make choices. So I wasn't always influenced by what was cool, and I wasn't forced to accept what he thought or my mother thought. I was really empowered to make decisions and to think out, I guess, it's funny. I've never actually thought about it like this before as I'm processing. And I think that's where I got my strategic mind from, because my father did things like that where I had to consider things and make the plan in order to get to accomplish a goal.
That's a freebie.
Thank you, Tim. How much do I owe you?
Well, that's pretty powerful. That's great, because a lot of times, people think, well, I'm just going to spoil my kids and I'll give them everything they want. And then they wonder why, when they grow up, why they're lazy.
Yeah.
But that sounds good. And you used the word empowerment, and that was a great life lesson for you. And I could tell that's really stuck around and really formed, kind of who you are today. So
absolutely,
that's wonderful. And earlier you were telling me that you're going on lack of sleep and you're just kind of buried in work, and so that kind of goes with the next question I wanted to ask you about being burned out and stressed and to your limit, and how do you cope with being mentally drained? What are your coping mechanisms?
I think that goes right back to what I was just saying, and it is the way I see it, because people are worried. They're like, you're gonna burn out, you're going too long, and it's like, but I hear you. And I appreciate that, but I'm also very aware of my limits. I'm very aware of, I'm at the kind of peak where I'm recognizing, okay, I took on too much. And what I tend to do is just take back some time. When I make a commitment, it's really important to me to follow through with it. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And if that means that I'm going to stay up all night to get those emails out that I promised to. So I try not to make promises. I try to manage my schedule so that I can pre-plan for myself first. However, there are times like today and this week in general, I think, where I missed the mark. And so I don't give in, I don't give up, but I assess the situation and I ask myself, is it worth it? And what is the payoff in the end? And so that's how I'm able to look at it and say, okay, well, this weekend is mine. And, okay, I've got a really early morning on Friday and Thursday is really busy too. So I'm aware that this is going to be a week that I have to hold my stuff together. And then I'm going to make sure that I go into my calendar and I just block off a bunch of time. Instead of letting people make appointments, I just say, no, that's my time. I may be out of whack right now, but I don't stay out of whack long. It's always for finite periods of time. And I think that's how I've avoided burnout, even though I've gotten to the verge. Does that make sense?
So it sounds like absolutely. And what you just shared, I think, is powerful information, is to build time into your calendar for you initially. and then work everything else around it. And of course, there's going to be times when you have other things come up that you just can't control, and you may not have that time, but then you get back to that schedule that you had before where you're putting yourself first. Because
Well, let me say one more thing too.
yeah,
I make choices based on alignment. So for example, we are recording this right now. It is 9:39 at night, and I started early today, and this is the fourth interview today, and I've had back-to-back meetings. So that's where I'm like, oh my gosh, and I still have this like pile of stuff I have to get done. But when you reached out to me, I assessed and I looked at your calendar and what was available, and I made the very conscious choice to do this because I wanted to. I'm honored to be here, and your
thank you.
mission is something that I want to support and I want to be a part of, and I want to get to know you. So yes, I could have said, no, it doesn't work for me, but that wouldn't have served me as well as going a little bit later today, because that relationship and like what could come out of this, who knows? But I'm way more excited about pushing myself a little bit beyond my limit intentionally for something that I believe has a better payoff than, again, like you said, playing it safe, right? So there's that, do I want to stay comfortable or do I want to stretch just a little bit and get uncomfortable in this situation because I want this transformation or to find out what's next?
And this is a good lesson for those who are listening who want to be an entrepreneur, is if you're used to the 5 o'clock whistle and you know, packing up at 4:55 and then the whistle blows and you love going home and that's the end of the day, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
Because as you said, there are times you're going to spend, you know, a lot of time and you don't get the immediate reward. You're not getting paid for all the work that you do, but it's about putting in all the work for a delayed, kind of a delayed gratification. And at some point, it all comes back to you, and being able to serve others and put that time in and burn the you know, the midnight candle and do your thing. That's part of it. So, you know, what you explained is, and that's the reality of it. But when you're passionate about helping people and you're passionate about what you do, it doesn't seem that difficult. So, well, that's great. So what's been the most fulfilling part of your journey?
This, really and truly this, just the connections and just the opportunity to have a voice to and with people who I otherwise would never have met. It's just so rewarding and fulfilling to recognize every moment and be present in every moment. And yeah, I mean, I still have to pinch myself that I'm living this life. And I have to remind myself, oh yeah, this is what I was planning for. It's funny though, because I was planning for this like in my 10-year plan and, you know, it only took 9 months. And so it's just humbling and exciting. And every day with every relationship, every connection, everybody that I share space with.
Sure, absolutely. And it's about the people you meet on your journey and, you know, and learning about their life and their experience. And it really enlightens you. And it's kind of equated to the first time I traveled out of the country. And, you know, when I saw that, wow, you know, people do things a lot differently than I do. And it just expanded my whole, I don't know, view of the world and life. And the more people that I meet, the more people that I talk to, and it just changes you, enriches your life. And you can't put a price tag on that. So, you know, definitely for me, I agree that, you know, being able to meet so many different people with great, interesting stories is just, you know, that's awesome. It's incredible for me. Well, we're come to the end of the show, and Nicole, it's been fantastic talking to you. So I wanted to give you a little bit of time to tell the audience about where they can find you, or your website, all that good stuff if they want to connect with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that opportunity, and I appreciate you and this conversation and everybody who's been here with us. The best way to connect with me, if you're interested in getting more visible as an entrepreneur, whether you are just starting out or whether you're already in the game, is, you know, what I really focus on is helping you get out there through podcast interviews. And so the best way to connect with me on that is to go to interviewsthatconvert.com/ Tim. And what you'll find there is a free gift. It's 6 steps to getting the gig. So you'll be able to learn my system for how I get podcast hosts to say yes to me and to my clients, to having us on the show. If you don't care about that aspect, but you just want to give me a shout out and let me know how much you valued this episode, I would love to hear that as well. And if you go to interviews.convert.com/Tim and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll find all of my social media links. So again, interviews.convert.com/Tim is the place to find me.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time, Nicole. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I will definitely be in touch and look forward to many more conversations with you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlascos.com.